I'm really so excited about this webinar tonight. And so here's a preview of what we're going to cover. And we're going to cover it with one of my most favorite people in the world, Dr. Deb. So we're going to be talking about the morphology resources within our 195 literacy ecosystem. I'll just spend a minute talking about the ecosystem. And then we'll move right into Dr. Deb discussing and deepening our understanding of morphological production and morphological awareness. So hopefully we will be able to review your questions, gain insight, how to teach morphological awareness, and give you lots of great instructional tips so that morphology can be more approachable and impactful. And wait for it, stay to the end because you may have a chance to win some morphology resources. I always start with this slide when we open up our webinars because I just want to make sure that you all know who we are at 95% Group. If you do know who we are, I like to revisit these principles because this really drives the work that we do at 95%. It's really the why of what we do. We believe that all children deserve a chance to learn to read, and I know that every single one of you tuning into us tonight, all 600 of you, 771 of you tuning in, that's your mission as well. Our purpose is to unlock that power of literacy for every child. And we at 95% do that by building on the science to empower educators with knowledge, resources, and support they need to transform developing readers. These are our North Stars that really keep us focused on our important mission. So a distinctive feature of 95% Group is we have this unique literacy ecosystem approach. It's known as our 195 literacy ecosystem. And we offer instructional solutions that are cohesive and aligned in instruction across grades and across tiers so that our students can have that consistent academic language, consistent high impact routines. So what this pyramid shows you is what we call our flagship products in each tier of instruction. So tier 1 core, we offer the proven phonics core program, spans K through 5. In tier 2 intervention, we offer the fully aligned phonics lesson library connected to our tier 1 through a very precise and easy to use diagnostic assessment on our literacy intervention system. And then our tier 3 offering is 95 WRAP, which is really a one-of-a-kind individualized approach for our students who need the most intensive intervention. All of these products, again, are cohesive, aligned across the same scope and sequence, and each tier is designed to provide more time, intensity, and focus of instruction to meet the needs of our learners. Also, please notice that these are underscored by strong and comprehensive professional learning, including our asynchronous offering Top 10 Tools, which is written by tonight's speaker, Deb Glaser, along with product training, coaching, and our foundational courses. Now, what you'll see here is Morpheme Magic and Morpheme for Little Ones, part of our 195 literacy ecosystem. So for those of you familiar with our products, you might be asking, well, how do these fit into our ecosystem? What you'll see here is that Morphemes for Little Ones is that perfect fit in our core K3 portfolio of products, and Morpheme Magic is just right for 3-5 core. I also want you to notice that Morpheme Magic can be used as intervention as well. So between Morpheme Magic, Morphemes for Little Ones, we are really covering all the grades, aren't we, Deb?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So good. Well, that's just a brief background of how Morpheme Magic fits in our ecosystem. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Deb Glaser, my friend and colleague. And again, she's going to do a deeper dive into morphological production, morphological awareness, and overview these special products for you tonight. I am thrilled because I always learn from Dr. Deb. So let me just give you a brief bio before she gets started. Dr. Deb Glaser is a consultant, author, and teacher educator who's beloved for enriching teachers' knowledge of reading and for her own proven instructional methods. Deb was a teacher. She also directed the educational arm of the nonprofit Dyslexia Learning Center, where she developed programs to teach teachers and to teach students. Deb was an original National Letters trainer, a policy advisor to the National Council on Teacher Quality, and she regularly contributes to the evaluation of university programs that prepare our teachers to teach reading. And Deb, in the chat, I noticed we do have some people from higher ed tonight, so that's really exciting. Deb is the author and co-author of 5 books, obviously, Morphemes for Little Ones, Morpheme Magic, 2 of her most recent. And also the online reading courses I mentioned before, Reading Teachers Top 10 Tools by 95% Group. All these products are part of our ecosystem, and we are really proud and honored to offer these wonderful programs to educators everywhere. And on a personal note, Deb is just one of the people I admire most. She has taught me so much, and I know this is going to be a great evening for all of you. So welcome, Dr. Deb, and again, welcome to all of you who are joining us tonight.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Barbara. Let's get into this right away because I want to cover so much with you within a short period of time. Anytime I begin talking about morphology with teachers, I want to take us back to the grassroots of why we do what we do, and that is to take that language brain that our students are born with and revise that brain, develop that brain into a reading brain. And that requires an integration of the language students speak with the language that we are teaching them to read. So integrating listening, speaking, and then reading and writing, but we must emphasize the structure of language that is the speech sound system. So the phonology, we often think of phonemes and phoneme awareness as those separate phonemes in words, but phonemes also are paramount in helping us understand the meanings of words. Phonemes are what differentiate one word and its meaning from another. And writing system, the orthography, the reason we even do this, create that awareness of the language we speak, is to assist with the development of the written language, the access to the written language. Syntax is critical. When we're speaking about morphology, we're also talking about the part of speech. The suffix can change, the prefix can change and alter the part of speech, which is going to impact where and how that word is used in a sentence. Teachers have told me, I had no idea that morphology had so much to do with parts of speech, nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs. Yeah, it does. And then, of course, morphology, which is the meaningful parts, is the master center of all of this, the sound, the orthography, and the meaning, and then in semantics, and then the organization of spoken and written discourse, the words we use to speak our thoughts and ideas, the words we read, which tend to be much more formal and richer and deeper morphologically in the written discourse. So it is just maybe make a note of this, take a screenshot of this, and just come back occasionally and read this to place yourself in that frame of mind of how am I going to integrate these components of language today with my students. So morphology, as I just pointed out, lives in all the component areas. Phonology, the sound system. The word revise has a different phonological form than devise. So revise and devise, two different words, very, very different words, but only one phoneme differs between the two of those words. We have semantics, the meanings of those words. I would like you to revise the plan means a lot different than would you please devise a plan? And then we have the morphemes. And the morphemes are the same root, vise, which means to see. And we have re and d. Re means to do again or go back. So you're going to revise your plan, and devise the plan means down or away from. Let's devise this plan now. Let's take a look at it and create it. All right. We have discourse. So how do we use each of these words? And what if I want to say, after you revise your sentence, would you please share your revision? Which is the noun and which is the verb. As speakers of this language, we have a knowledge of these words as a part of speech, how to use those words in sentences, and when they're not used and we don't fit them into a sentence to support their part of speech, it sounds funny. It doesn't make sense to us. Would you please hand me your revise when you are finished? No, it doesn't sound right because we put a verb in there instead of the noun. All right. So discourse requires then in our lessons with our students that we ask them to always use the words we are studying within a context, within a sentence to share ideas or express what they have learned. And then the order of words to convey thought. When a word is new to a child, they're very novice in how they can use that word. And we need to provide multiple examples to students for how a word is used, or prompt them, or provide sentence frames for them to get a sense of how that word sounds in a sentence, how that word will fit with the ideas or the other words around it. And then pragmatics, the rules of social discourse. We have formal settings in which we use language, and the words we choose to use will differ than the words in our informal settings, for example. But in our classrooms, we use academic language. That's the pragmatics of language in our classrooms. And I'm going to talk about academic language tonight. So morphology and orthography are two different colors within these language components to point out the importance of explicit, systematic instruction to provide an understanding of the morphology, to create an awareness of the morphemes in words, and also how to spell those words. So the decoding and the encoding are critically important to building those pathways to quick word recognition and accessing meaning. Many times when we talk about orthographic mapping, the quick and accurate recognition of a word in print, we leave out the access to meaning. A word is mapped in our brain. A written word is mapped in our brain when we read it quickly and access the meaning of that word. So teaching the meaningful parts of the word morphology assists with building the orthographic mapping of a word. You've heard listening, speaking, reading. That's been around since the state standards all those years ago started, and those are the premise in most reading programs. But how often do we stop and explore those words that we teach through our conversation with students and as they listen to the words we use? How often do we ask them to speak those words back and then read those words? But exploring those words requires we go into the morphology of those words, and sometimes the etymology too. The history of a word can be fascinating. I'm living up in the mountains in Idaho, central Idaho this winter, and skiing almost every day. And I was a little curious about the etymology of the word ski. Well, it's Nordic. It's from the northern lands, and ski means literally a splinter of wood. So the first skis, of course, were wooden and the splinter of wood. And today we're skiing on much higher level technology, but we still call them skis. But exploring words creates that interest and that curiosity, and it takes us into so much more than just this is the word, read it, this is what it means. And the deeper we know a word, the deeper it becomes in our depth of knowledge, word recognition, and also comprehension, reading comprehension. Always ask your students to write the words you teach. Not only writing the words and walking through and explaining and exploring the spelling of those words through the morphology, but also using those words orally in sentences and writing those sentences. All right, so morphology lives in all the language components. And why do we even focus on helping students become aware of the language they speak and produce? Because it makes a powerful contribution to word reading abilities. I know you can read over these bullet points. It makes the points from research that continues to help us understand the importance of morphology. And in some cases, it is the sole or strongest predictor of reading and spelling ability. As early as kindergarten, the language children use and intuit an implicit understanding of the composition of sentences and how to use words sets the stage for that ability then to become aware of that language. One of just a real cute little story I just heard. My daughter-in-law told me that she was looking over this behind the couch, looking for to see what needed to be picked up behind the couch or something. And my grandson asked her, what are you doing, Mommy? She goes, I'm just looking to see if there's anything behind the couch here. And he says, well, is there anything unusual? This is a 3-year-old. Well, that use of language right away demonstrates that this child has been exposed to a lot of language. And when that time comes to become aware of those words and the morphological makeup of those words and word families, this child is ready for that. So Morphemes for Little Ones came about after Morpheme Magic, when teachers just asked me time and time again, what can I use to teach my little ones, my K through 3? These lessons are organized into 3 different levels that gradually grow into more and more sophisticated and difficult levels of words. It sets the stage for moving into Morpheme Magic. Children who have been through Morphemes for Littles will have a greater appreciation and awareness and be ready to begin studying the Latin roots in Morpheme Magic. As we know, researchers have shared with us, the around 4th grade is when the vocabulary in written text begins to become much more morphological in terms of the Latin roots and the prefixes, suffixes that will be used, and children will be ready for that study after the awareness exercises in Morphemes for Littles. There are language stimulation cards to help teachers engage students in lots of language play with the word samples and morphemes that are taught. And there are built-in assessments to help you understand where children are in their development of morphological awareness. An example of a lesson out of Morphemes for Littles, and bringing in all of the components that we spoke about in each lesson. Each lesson takes about a week, and every 2 or 3 weeks you'll do a review. These lessons integrate very nicely with your phonics lessons, and we ask that you even bring in words that children are learning to read into the lessons. This is a level 1 lesson, which is kindergarten and 1st grade. When the kindergarten goes through this program, there will be less of the orthography and more of the language, and teaching the awareness of what we hear in a word. How is big different than bigger, for example, and then using those 2 words in sentences to demonstrate the adjective form of this word. Lots of work with the inflectional suffixes. There is always exploring the morpheme through word and word samples, exploring the phonemes. What are the phonemes in these words? How did this word big change when we say bigger? Exploring the orthography and the spelling, and teaching the spelling rules, especially the doublet rule here. There's our morpheme grabber. If you look over on the next slide, we engage the children in the morpheme card. Teachers are led to use the morpheme card to, as I mentioned, engage children in language, but children do record their learnings in a morpheme grabber, we call it. And there are lots of ideas for how to build a morpheme journal for the students. Lots of oral language and writing, and then review and practice. Excuse me. And like I said, this can take a week. There are enough lessons for 1 a week, and also then built-in review weeks. Morpheme Magic then is for grades 4 through 12. We know from research that intensive systematic explicit instruction in morphology with children who have dyslexia especially can be very, very effective. There are wall cards too that come with with this program, from which you can use for review, posting on post them up in the room, and I also like to hand them out to small groups of students and have them prepare a little presentation during the review weeks. And this Morpheme Magic lesson here, we build in once again the components. The children hear the morpheme that's being taught, they say it, they read it, they learn what it means. That all the directions are here for the teacher to teach those morphemes within those key words. The focus words are taught, and then there are what I call connect passages for comprehension and also for slipping those focus words into the blanks to create a nice passage to comprehend. And Barbara, if you would post in the chat right now, are you going to drop a link in to the connect passages for our attendees tonight?
Yes, I've already dropped that in, Deb.
Okay, so everyone, one of the questions I get from so many of you who use this program is, I see the connect passage there, but are there black line masters, or is there a way for me to project these for the students to also participate in and complete? So we've got those for you tonight, and I know that's going to make a lot of you very, very happy. There's a morpheme lexicon the students create and record all the work they do in this program in their morpheme lexicon and create quite a beautiful accumulation of their learning in morphology through this lexicon. And then there's always work to be done around words that are developed from the target morphology. And I've included lots of ideas for you on ways to engage students in activities that are helpful in providing that time to learn. And always ask your students to write. And it's not just write a sentence with this word. Whenever we're teaching a vocabulary word, ask students to use the word to express something they have learned. Model for them one way to use that word in you're learning something in science or social studies or a novel you're reading, and ask students then to share their sentences orally and write them. So there were several questions that came up, and then I wanted to just go through a couple of those, and then I've got some tips to share with you. So one question that surfaced that we thought might make for some good conversation is, how do we get started? Well, there are lots of ways to start teaching morphology with the program and even without the program. The lessons in Morpheme Magic and Little Ones are systematic. So whether you're teaching the most common morphemes that appear in our spoken language and also in text first, and then working to more sophisticated and rare morphemes. But I designed them with the student in mind to create an environment wherein curiosity about morphology can grow, and with you teachers at heart, because so many teachers have told me that they don't know where to get started and they don't feel comfortable or confident in their own knowledge of morphology. So you're going to be learning right along with your students as you prepare the lessons, as you teach them, and the next time it will be a little more, come a little more easily, and your own interest in words will grow right along with them. I do have a video that demonstrates how I like to introduce morphology to students, and Barbara's going to drop a link to that video in the chat for you. It's also available along with several other videos for Morpheme Magic lessons on the Facebook group page, which I'll show you in a moment. And we are going to be creating some lessons for morphemes for littles, video lessons of teaching morphemes for littles, and those will be available next fall. So you'll have to stay tuned for that one. And there are boot camps. We really suggest that you take a class, attend one of these boot camps to learn more about the program, about morphology, to give you that background knowledge and how best to apply the program. There will have a little bit more about this at the end of our webinar tonight, and there's also a QR code here that you can scan to get more information. Okay, using these resources, they're intended for Tier 1, but very, very easy to bring into Tier 2 and also into your work with reading disability, learning disabled students, language disabled students, and also children with dyslexia. So Morphemes for Littles, along with Morpheme Magic, can provide access to Tier 1 and then backing up lessons for children whose learning levels require that entry level at a less, maybe starting with the suffixes and Anglo-Saxon words, which would match their phonics lessons or their systematic reading lessons. We do ask that you use your data to determine language and reading levels, and if you have access to assessments in the Morphemes for Littles, that can really let you know how well their language has developed, their production, and then if they have some awareness. For example, in one of the assessments for Morphemes for little ones, there are several oral language components, and children can do really well with oral language. And then you might say the word backpack. What 2 words make up that word? And I've had a kindergarten student look at me and have no idea what I was asking. And so there was a wonderful indicator that this student has this wonderful production of morphologically complex words and understands their part of speech in sentences. But they're ready to learn now an awareness of those words that they speak, starting with the compound word level. Morpheme Magic has assessments for each lesson. And those can be used for a they can be used for a post assessment. Both resources can be used very effectively in both tiers. So the Morphemes for little ones and Morpheme Magic sample lessons, if you go to the Facebook group page, Morpheme Magic, teachers ask me all the time, I can't find those videos that are on the Morpheme on the Facebook page. Well, click on guides, and I'm not sure if you're on your handheld device, if the access is the same, but on a computer, you will see guides, and that is where you will find multiple videos of Morpheme Magic lessons, and coming next fall, Morphemes for Little Ones lessons. So progress monitoring, use those Morpheme Magic assessments. And I also would like to point out that when I developed these Morpheme Magic assessments, one for each lesson, I incorporated what we know about assessing students' proxial and distal understanding of vocabulary. And one of the weaknesses we have, teachers, is that ability to ask the types of questions that help students go deep in their understanding of vocabulary terms. So here's an example. This is the assessment for the prefix re, and these are 4 of the words that were included in the lesson during the week. And I think if you read through these, you'll get a sense of how children have to think pretty deeply about the application of those words to answer these questions, which is that more distal or deeper understanding. they've learned the prefixes and they've learned the stem meanings of each of these words. And these are the kinds of questions that we teachers need to train ourselves to ask. And I suggest that you use these questions throughout the week. Use them as you're teaching the lesson to engage the students in these conversations. And then when they have the assessment, how well are they able to then think independently to answer those questions? So those assessments are designed to help you teach. Teachers use them that way. And then the assessments in littles I talked about. And there are no assessments built in for each of the lessons, but teachers, you can assess young students' morphological awareness and retention after teaching your phonics lesson by simply asking students or dictating to them some of the words that they have read, and then ask them to circle the part that carries the main meaning and underline the suffixes. So if you've taught the word jump and you've taught the past tense ed, you might say, I'd like you to write the word jumped, circle the main part of that word, the main meaning part of that word, which is jump, and did we add any suffixes to that word, underline it, and then have them write a sentence. So there's a real simple way to bring in some assessments for each lesson based on what you have taught with the base words and prefixes or suffixes.
Deb, can I just stop you for just a second, because we did have a question about the assessments.
Okay.
And just where are they? Are they in the book itself?
The assessments for Morpheme Magic are in the book itself. If you have one of the first edition Morpheme Magic books, there is a separate book of assessments only that you can purchase from 95% Group.
Great. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
The other question, go ahead, Deb, go ahead.
And then the assessments for little ones is also in the Morphemes for Little Ones book.
Okay, so that somebody just asked that. Yes, they're right in the book, they said. Okay, very good. And can you also just comment on, somebody asked, about letters training, and if they've gone through letters training, how is this, kind of the next step forward?
Well, I know letters training very intimately, and I know that there is quite a bit about the morphophonological aspect of our written language, that the spellings of our words are based on morphemes and they're based on the sounds. The sounds then have their basis in the morphemes. How we spell words is dependent upon the morphemes in those words. So I know the morphophonemic aspect of words is touched upon quite heavily in letters, and I know that teaching systematically and explicitly is touched upon. I know that the 4 processing units in letters, the orthographic is dependent upon the phonological, which must be in place to access the meaning, and then the meaning of the word is based in context.
Right. And also letters being the professional learning for the teachers, this, Morphemes for Little Ones and Morpheme Magic provides additional support for teachers, but also the lessons to enact that knowledge base.
Yeah, right. And that I know for many, many years when I would provide professional development in that way, I was always left with a little bit of an empty feeling for these teachers, because they had spent so much of their energy gaining this knowledge and this time of becoming eligible. But then what do I do with this when I get back into my classroom? And that's where a very well-developed program can be so valuable, because now you have the knowledge of why this is important and how to teach. And this is the tool that can help you do that.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of a hallmark of 95% Group, right? We're trying to not only build knowledge, but build the application of that knowledge through good classroom resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thanks,
We're
Deb.
looking at Aries phases of word recognition here, and that is, we're going to find that in any well-designed professional development right now. But many times we don't think about the morphological awareness, how that fits in. So when teachers ask me, are my students ready to learn about morphemes, to become aware of the prefixes and suffixes and roots? I say, well, let's look at how our language development, our word recognition development happens, because it's very closely tied to where our language development. So, for example, in the pre-alphabetic phase, when children are the whole association of letters and sounds isn't even there, they're building their language, and they hear the word perhaps react when a bee lands on their finger, and the mom says, now don't react, hold still. Or someone asks, how did you react when that bee landed on you? React becomes a word that the student hears within a variety of contexts. In the partial alphabetic phase, they're still developing this awareness of this language and using more of that language themselves. And they might recognize when they hear that word react that it has a t on the end that they hardly hear. It's react, and it's a silent sound. They're becoming aware of phonemes. In the full alphabetic phase, at the beginning of this phase, as children are learning all of the vowel spellings, all those vowel teams, they might see this word and try to put that EA together as a vowel team. And they might say reeked, saying each of the sounds, because that word act is not yet in their orthographic memory. Act has not become a unit in and of itself yet, visually. It's in their spoken language, and react is in their spoken language, right? But now that you can kind of think of the spelling and the reading as kind of following behind that acquisition of language, all right? But once students, and toward the end of the full alphabetic phase, when ACT becomes pretty well embedded in that orthographic processing and mapped, and meaning is there, they're going to see this word, and that word ACT is going to stand out. And they're probably going to read it. They're going to really make that association. And then consolidated is when all of those words from react, all those word forms, react, reaction, reactivate, reactive, become part of that 87,000 word families out there. I remember Joe Torgeson once at a presentation years and years and years ago, he talked about morphology. And at that point, even this was like in probably around 2000, he's saying there are over 87,000 word families out there. If we know one of those words, react, look, and then we begin to learn about the morphology of those words and the prefixes and suffixes and how the sounds change and how the spellings change, we are building such a wealth of knowledge about words. And this is when all of those benefits of morphology begin to demonstrate themselves in our acquisition of reading. So what this means to us teachers is we are building language at the same time that we're building that language through the listening and speaking. At the same time, we are building then the word recognition toward that consolidated recognizing and decoding words based on the morphology, syllables and morphological components of the word. So where to begin and how? If you've seen any of my webinars before, you've seen this, but I want to make sure you got this, because first of all, we want to make sure that students are familiar with multisyllabic words, because and that would mean the ability to clap them out, hear those chunks, because we're going to start with compounds when children are really young, and we're going to be explicit. These are free base words, back and pack. It's a back, put them together, and it's a pack on my back. Pine cone. Cone that grows on a pine tree is a pine cone. They can stand alone, but they can make one word when they're together. Very simple morphological concept. And then in first and second grade, add those suffixes to words. Begin by adding suffixes that require no spelling changes. Okay. That's going to be kind of tough. And in most programs, we start to teach those spelling rules with doubling it in first grade. And I think that's more realistic, that you would have that opportunity and would need to do that, because CVC words, adding a suffix that starts with a vowel, you're going to have to double that final letter. But by mid-second grade, children should be very familiar with those beginning spelling rules for adding suffixes. And in both Morpheme Magic and Morphemes for Littles, I have spelling anchor charts that could be enlarged, that can be placed up in your room, and you can take children through the checkpoints of looking at the base word, looking at the suffix that's going to be added, and determining what change needs to be made. Double it, change it, or drop it. Start with the common prefixes, the most common. Do you have any words in your phonics program on which you can add any of those suffixes or any of these prefixes? Teach the inflections, the most common ones children use in their first spoken language and that are more easily added to those Anglo-Saxon words, the most common words that we teach children to read and speak, common words for common items in our world: sun, moon, cup, bread, jump, run, play, words that have vowel variants in them. The Latin is really much easier to spell than our Anglo-Saxon, but the Latin roots, of course, are in more complex vocabulary terms. And when we're teaching the prefixes, I just want to draw your attention to this I think it's just the amazing research that Holly Lane and her colleagues did, where they searched for the frequency of prefixes, but they also looked at suffixes and roots. This is the prefixes I'm going to show you here. In the texts, the number of words, the total number of words that were prefixed is the number above each of these, the full collection: English language arts, math, science, and social studies. And I want you to notice the most common prefixes. And I thought, when I looked at this study, this is a wonderful resource for us to know where to begin. Okay, so what words do I use? Every day in our classrooms, teachers, the words that comprise our directions to students, our instruction, and their learning, we're talking academic language, are the words that we can use in our classrooms to teach morphology. So re was one of those first most common prefixes in our English language arts books and science and social studies everywhere. Okay. And so I looked and thought, let's look at the academic language. Now all of you have those lists of hundreds of words that are our academic vocabulary terms. And I put them into those most common prefixes that we just looked at, these, con, re, and in, and I think I picked a couple more as well, and created a document for you that provides the academic term, the refer, reflect, rephrase. Think how you use these words in your classrooms. I would like you to reflect on what you just learned and be ready to share with the class. I would like you to refer back to chapter 1. Would you please rephrase that sentence and use our new vocabulary term? I'm going to make a request of you right now and reveal what did your behavior just reveal about how you're feeling today? So, and I know this is something that you've heard often, but do you do it? Use these academic terms in your classrooms and then teach them. So I gave you a meaning and I gave you the word forms. I gave you the morphemes and their meanings so you can learn right along with your students. Okay. And then what are the word forms? Refer, well, reference, referred, referable, and so on. So I know Barb is going to drop those link to that document for you tonight to have access to, because teaching morphology can be every day, all day. Making it easy. I'm giving you this information here to make it easy to get started. On daily, I mean, who doesn't use these math terms? Do you ever stop and think about the morphemes in these terms? Add means to combine something with something else. So we're going to do an addition problem today, the state of adding, and we're going to combine this number with this number. What do we get? Subtract. Sub means under, and tract means to pull. So when we subtract, what do? We pull down, right? We get smaller. Our numbers get smaller. Whoever thought that? And then subtraction, of course, is your noun form. Multiply, multi means many, and ply means folds. So when we multiply, we have many folds of 3. 3 times 4, many folds of 4, many folds of 3, we get 12. So make many folds many times. Multiplication. And division, dis is your prefix, which means apart, and vide means to separate. So when we divide, what do? We're going to separate apart. Divide things, divide numbers, the state of division, the separating apart. Talk about the morphology with the common terms that we use in our classroom every day. Be curious about them. Ask your students to become curious. Have a word wizard in your classroom. The assignment, that is your job this week. When we have a question about a word, you're going to look it up in our Morpheme dictionary. ETYM online, ETYM online is a good resource, and the AI has some wonderful resources right now too for looking up morphemes and getting the information, looking up words for morphology. If any of you have some resources, drop them in the chat. Good resources for kids to use and teachers to use, because we got to look it up if we have a question. And apply a systematic process in your work with students. If you're teaching academic language, or this is the process I applied in Morpheme Magic and Morphemes for little ones. Have the students hear the word or the morpheme that's being taught and say it. Stimulate the phonological processor. And then have them read the morpheme and read the example words. Explain those meaningful parts. Provide examples. There's your orthography, your morphology, your semantics. Teacher models the use of the word. That is so important. And model the use within a context that's familiar to the students. Maybe something they're studying, or a experience that you've had in your classroom. Students read the word then and write the word. Always have them write the word and write it in a sentence as well. Your options are limitless when you're going to examine or explore the word. Look at the syllables. Look at the morphemes. Why is this word spelled this way? And take the students into the exploration of alternate word forms. So discuss the parts of speech, how it sounds in a sentence. Have students write and use their word forms. Maybe an academic word a week for a while or something. I'm sure your little brains are really revolving around this information right now. How can I bring this into my classroom? Or some of you are probably saying, yes, I'm doing this. And I'm proud of you if you are. Make sure you display the term, the morpheme, the associated words for review. And also, if they're displayed, that'll remind you to bring them into your speaking for the children to listen, and also for further exploration. So let's go through that process with the word collaborate. I love this word, this academic word. This one makes perfect sense, and it provides so many opportunities for teaching about morphology. So the word is collaborate. Everyone say it. Right. Collaborate means we work together, right? I know we do that in our classrooms all the time. The prefix on collaborate is COL, which is a form of con, which means with, but we changed the N to L because this is one of those chameleon prefixes where it wants to match the base to which it is affixed. So we spell it C-O-L, and that's why collaborate has two L's, because the prefix has an L and our base, labor, has an L. So starts with an L. So that's why we double the L. And 8 is a verb forming suffix. Our word is collaborate, and it means we work with each other. Let's collaborate, right? Today we will collaborate to brainstorm ways to bring academic language into our classrooms. How would you use the word collaborate? Right. First syllable, call, lab, or 8. But what is the base of this word? Labor. How does labor sound different than lab or, yeah, the vowel sound changes, doesn't it? Right. Where is the stress or the accent in that word? Collaborate. Right. Good. That's a closed syllable. That means a closed syllable has a short vowel sound, right? Right. But in labor, it's an open syllable. Oh, isn't that interesting how it changes? But that we still spell it the same. Even though it sounds different, the syllables are different, we're going to spell it the same. Syllables are not always one-on-one corresponding with our morphemes, are they? What are some alternate word forms? We have collaborated, collaborative, right? Collaborating. We dropped the E on that one, right? Collaborating, yes. So display and use. All right, so hear, say, read, provide meaning. Students write it. Students use the word, examine, explore the word. Labor, right in there, work. Let's work together. All right, so we promised you practical, doable, and impactful. Here are some ideas. Work through the affixes, that list that I showed you. Choose a word or more from a phonics lesson. Get started slowly and add the affix to that word that you choose. You know, make sure it's going to make a real word. Add the new words to your decoding lesson and your encoding lesson, and review every day using solve a word. If you are teaching TCH at the end for that ch sound following a short vowel, catch, why not add able? And then catchable would be the word. Have catchable written on the board when the students come in. Teach them when they see their solve a word, they are to circle the base, the word that carries, the part of the word that carries the main meaning, and underline any prefixes and suffixes. Be ready to say what the word means. If something is catchable, it's able to be caught. Preview. View is one of those bases that is a Latin root, but it can stand alone as well. What a beautiful view. But view is the main meaning. With pre means we're going to view it before. Relax. Lax means to loosen, and means back. So let's sit back and loosen up, because morphology is doable. We can do this. Okay. All right. So I hope I gave you some ideas there and also maybe a deeper appreciation for how morphology could become a part of your daily routines in your classrooms.
Morphology boot camps for Morphemes for little ones and Morpheme Magic. The information on the dates is all here for you, but just go ahead and scan that QR code to learn more about how you could attend a boot camp for Morpheme Magic and Morpheme for little ones. And we have some upcoming events that we hope you'll tune in. On May 15th, I've been doing a series around the science of reading 2.0. And on May 15th, we'll have the last part of that series, which is all about protecting your science of reading investment. The first 3 of that webinar series are available on demand. And on Thursday, March 20th, I'm really excited to share this book, The Courage to Lead Literacy. Inspiring Bold Transformation. Please join me for that webinar to learn more about the implementation science and the importance of literacy leadership. So go ahead and register today. There's the QR code. And last but not least, join us in Kansas City, April 1st and 2nd, where Terry Nolan and I will be talking about implementation insights for leadership teams. We'll have leaders there. We really encourage you to bring your whole team, district level, building level, classroom level people in teams to really learn more about transformation and implementation. Thanks again so much for joining us tonight, Deb. This has been fantastic. We really appreciate you so much. Here's our contact information, my contact information, and Deb's. But also, if you're interested in learning more about 95% group, I noticed a lot of people in the chat were asking about other things like top 10 tools. And if you'd like to know more, here are your account executives in different states and different regions. Go ahead and reach out directly to account executive to find out more about our products and wonderful professional learning, including Morpheme Magic, Morpheme for Little Ones, and Top 10 Tools by 95% Group. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you, Dr. Deb. This was just so wonderful, and we appreciate every single one of you for being here.
Yes, thank all of you for everything you do, the pressures you feel, and hanging in there, and always remembering why we do what we do. We are improving lives, and we need you. So thank you for caring and being here tonight.
Good night, everybody.